Hello, I welcome you all to this wonderful lesson, and in this particular lesson I present to you biology. This is our first lesson, and the first thing that you are supposed to know and understand is the definition of biology. So this is just an introduction from a primary school where we were looking at science that had to comprise of chemistry, physics and biology. Everything was in one subject called science. But now when you graduate, you enter secondary, the biology now gets to talk about the living things, and chemistry, physics, they stand on their own as independent subjects. So this biology that we are talking about, you need to understand that this is a science. So biology is a science. So even as I'm writing, you're also writing down. So this is a science which deals with, it's a science which deals with the study. So it deals with the study of living organisms. Living what? Organisms. This is what you need to know and understand. So whenever we are talking about biology, we are talking about a science which deals with the study of living things. So biology is a study of living things. You also need to understand this same biology has got branches. So there are certain branches of biology that each student is supposed to know. So even as we begin to go deeper, even as I make biology very simple, there are certain branches that you need to understand. So we go to branches of biology. Let us look at certain branches of what? Biology. So these branches of biology, you need to make sure that you understand them, you get them clearly. So you discover that we're just talking about the study of living organisms. So I want you to understand this. The first one, there is a certain branch of biology called zoology. So there is one type of biology called zoology. So you ask yourself, what is zoology? So zoology is just the study of animals, encompassing various aspects of their biology, behavior, evolution. So here we are just talking about what? This is just the study. This is just the study of what? So we are saying the study of animals. So if I ask you that, what type of biology talks about the study of animals? It is called what? Zoology. This is what you need to understand. So it is a study of animals. Whenever we are looking at animals, their behavior, we look at the way they relate to the environment. So just the study of animals is called what? Zoology. There is another one that we get to call botany. So I want you to understand all this. This one is just a study. So we say the study of what? Plants. It is just the study of plants. So if I ask you, what branch of biology talks about the study of plants? It is called what? It is called botany. This is what you need to understand. This is what you need to know. So this is just the study of plants, including their structure, properties, biochemical processes, classification, and ecology. This is what botany. This is what you need to understand. This is the spelling. We may differ in pronunciation of words, but since you are able to get this, you are able to see what is there, we are able to flow together. So these are certain things that I want you people to know. These are things that I want you to understand. There is also another branch of biology that we get to call physiology. So there is this type of biology. What is this? You now discover that this is just the study of normal functioning. So physiology is a study of normal function. So this is just the study of normal function of living organisms. So the study of normal function of living organisms. So the study of normal function of living organisms. So living organisms and their parts This is what you are supposed to know. I want you people to get this. I want you people to understand what I'm teaching here. I guess we are able to move together. You are able to write down certain notes under these parts. There is also what we call genetics, is also a branch of biology. I know most of you know what genetics is. Genetics is just the study of the inheritance of what hereditary materials from parents to offsprings. That one we are going to look into it. So genetics is also another branch of biology. We've got genetics. There are a lot. There are various types of branches of biology. But the main ones, these are the main ones. These three, you are supposed to know them. These are the main branches of biology. There is what we call biochemistry, is also a branch of biology. Have you seen? There is also what we call biochemistry. So whenever we are talking about biochemistry, biochemistry is just a branch of science that explores the chemical processes and substances within living organisms. It combines principles from both biology and chemistry to understand the molecular mechanisms that underpin life. So this one tries to balance biology and chemistry. So they brought biology here, chemistry here to come up with biochemistry. So it balances between the two. That's the reason why we call it biochemistry. So I want you to know all these things. I want you to get what I am teaching. This is just a foundation. We are moving together, advancing. Guess you are able to understand what I am teaching you. After understanding all this, you discover that we are going to enjoy biology, in that we are going to talk about the behavior, structure, characteristics of living things and non-living things. This is what we are going to major in so much in this particular subject. And the good part is that by the end of this, there is an exam that is set that you are going to write. So an exam is prepared from this same introduction up to the last topic. So you need to understand this. You are tested on 3 papers. There is biology paper 1, paper 2, paper 3. Paper 1 and 2, these are theory papers. Then paper 3, that is practical. So I want you to understand this. You get to perform better in practical by reason of understanding the theory part. So I want you to understand the theory, then we major into other things. So you understand theory, practical is simple if you know theory. So I know I've got people that want to become nurses, doctors, like that. So let's make sure that we enjoy biology. Biology is a very nice subject. You just need to fall in love with it. So there is also what you need to understand. I've talked about living organisms. A living organism, non-living organism, those things you need to make sure that you understand them. So you discover that we are going to study the environment and the things that are found in the environment in relation to the same environment in which they get to live in. This is what we are going to be looking at. So from this point now, as we begin to move forward, there are key things that you need to understand. On the introductory part, you need to know how to state. You need to know how to state the what? How to state the characteristics of living organisms. So you need to know the characteristics of what? Living organisms. The characteristics of living organisms. So you need to make sure that you know that. The characteristics of living organisms. From there, you also need to distinguish. You need to be able to give a difference that gets to exist between, so distinguish living organisms. You need to be able to distinguish living organisms from non-living organisms. Non-living organisms. So from non-living organisms. This is what you are supposed to know and understand. All these things, you need to make sure that you know them, you understand them clearly. Is this not interesting? So once you understand all this, we are making biology very simple together. So I just want you to understand what I am teaching you. You understand everything that we are going to revise through till we write our exams. So I just want your total attention, and I want you to follow me clearly and attentively. So under this part now, I've told you that we need to understand these two. You need to be able to state the characteristics of living organisms. You also need to know how to distinguish living organisms from non-living organisms. You need to know all that. So whenever we are talking about a living organism, so a living organism, what you need to understand is this. This is something important that you need to understand. So whenever we are talking about a living organisms, let's say a living organism. So let's say this is a living organism. So you now discover that a living organism, so if this is a living organism, you now discover that we are talking about a living plant. A living what? A living plant. We are talking about a living dog. A living what? A living dog. So these are examples. When something is able to breathe, something is able to carry out excretion, growth, respiration, meaning that that is a living organisms. But whenever we are talking about non-living organisms, let's say non-what? Non-living organisms. Whenever we are talking about non-living organisms, what you need to understand is that this is where you get to have a dead dog. So you can talk of a dead dog or plant. These are examples of what? Non-living organisms. So when it is alive, we call it a living organism. And you need to understand, you know that both living organisms and non-living organisms are made up of matter. This is what you need to know. So you now understand that both living, so I'm going to say both living and non-living, organisms. So both living and non-living organisms are made up of matter. Are made up of matter. This is what you need to understand. Are made up of matter. In chemistry, we looked at what matter is. We understand what is matter. You are able to tell me the definition for matter. If I tell you what is matter, you'll be able to tell me that, okay, matter is anything that occupies space and has mass. So anything that is occupying space and has mass, it is referred to as matter. I guess we know that. So a pen, have you seen, this thing is able to occupy space, and this we can measure the mass of this marker, meaning this marker is matter. So both living and non-living, you are a person, we are able to measure your mass. So meaning you are a living organism, you are not dead yet. So you are a living organism, meaning you are able to occupy space and we are able to measure your mass. What is mass? Mass is the quantity of matter contained in a substance. So we are able to do all those things. So both living and non-living organisms are made up of what? Are made up of matter. And you need to understand that those are things, living organisms, that whenever we are talking about non-living organisms that were live at some point and they died, those ones are made up of organic matter. So we are talking about organic matter. So I'm saying that those are living, those non-living that were alive at some point, that lived before, those ones they get to contain what are made up of organic matter. So when I say this is an organic matter, what I mean is that, okay, this matter or this organic thing, it is a product of something that was alive at some point. Like in your case, when you die, so when a dog dies, so those things get to form what we call organic matter, because that dog was once alive. I guess you know what I mean. So whenever we are talking about organic matter, so each time we are talking about organic, how do we even write the word organic? Like this, organic matter. So whenever we are talking about organic matter, this is something that is non-living. This is a non-living thing. So it is coming from where? It comes from living, so I will say from organisms. So from organisms. So I'll say from organisms that once lived. This is what I'm going to do, so that I just differentiate the two. So an organic matter, this is a matter that is coming from organisms that once lived. But whenever we are talking about inorganic, so whenever we are talking about inorganic, when we are talking about inorganic matter, so this is inorganic matter. Whenever we are talking about inorganic matter, we are talking about a matter that comes from organisms. So coming from where? Coming from things. So coming from substances, let me say, coming from things that never lived before. Biology is a bit sensitive, and each word that you get to use, you need to make sure that you know it. Have you seen? So you may end up using a word like the one that I wanted to use there. This one is sensitive, and you need to make sure that each word that you get to use, you are able to know its meaning. So these are certain things that I want you people to know, and I always tell you, information, these notes are everywhere. The most important thing is understanding what I am teaching you. If you are able to understand what I'm teaching you, then we are going to enjoy biology. But if you just want to be writing notes, notes are everywhere. So the key thing is understanding what I'm teaching, and I'm making sure that you understand what I am teaching. This is something that is so simple. This is something you need to understand. So these things are here. So I'm going to post even this video to other people that are not under us, so that those that are interested can also join. So if you're watching this, you're not under my online lessons, I've started biology tuitions. You can contact me on my number, which is 0971 066747, 0971 066747. That's my number. I've started biology. This is our first lesson. So if you are interested, you can start now. So I don't share lessons, just that this one, I've just decided to share it publicly, even to other people that are interested, seeing that it is our first lesson. Let us now move on and look at other things. So I said that we need to look at, you need to be able to distinguish living organisms from non-living organisms, from which we are going to answer this question by looking at the characteristics of living organisms. So let us look at the characteristics of living organisms. Biology is interesting. So if you don't love biology, develop feelings for it now. So let us look at characteristics of living organisms. Let us look at characteristics of living organisms. So let me use a different marker. Let us look at the characteristics. So let us look at the characteristics of living organisms. So these characteristics of living organisms are the actual biology. This is the actual biology now. Once you understand, there are about 7 characteristics of living organisms. Once you understand them, then you know biology. You can even congratulate yourself that, okay, I've made it now. So once you study these things in advance, like you study them, these are 7 characteristics of biology. These are the topics that we are going to be expanding laboring to explain you are studying and gaining more information. So make sure that I involve you in this particular lesson so that even as you get to answer that question in an exam, you know that you are grounded in biology, not where you are answering, you are even feeling pity for the answers that you are putting on those in that answer booklet. You need to be grounded in this. The first one that you are supposed to know, the first characteristic of biology is called reproduction. Reproduction. This is interesting. It is called reproduction. There is only one thing that comes to people's mind whenever they hear the word reproduction. So, but you discover that questions, you know that reproduction is in two. Reproduction is the process by which living organisms produce their young ones. And this the reproduction is in two. There is what we call asexual reproduction, and there is what we call sexual reproduction. So what comes in people's mind is that okay, this is sexual reproduction and this is so simple. But if you've observed, questions that do come, they just focus on what? Asexual reproduction so much. It's layer, you just get to find one or two questions under sexual reproduction. But they want you to understand so much the reproduction that gets to take place in plants. So you understand what reproduction is. You also need to know what we get to call movement. The other term that they can use is locomotion. So you need to understand locomotion. So you need to understand this. So it is just another word that we can use. There is also the third one that you are supposed to know. It is called growth. So this is to tell you that living organisms are able to move, are able to locomote. They're able to move from one place to the other point by certain processes. So this is movement. They are able to move. A plant is able to move from this point to the other point. You now discover that plants are able to grow. You are able to grow. Any living organism is able to grow. So every living organism is able to undergo these 7 characteristics that I'm going to talk about. What is growth? Growth is just is a permanent increase in mass, compressivity. So it's just the permanent increase in mass. So it is able to grow. And once we are saying a permanent increase in mass, and according to science, which is physics, there's a big difference between mass and weight. So I'm not talking about weight where you reduce in size or here you gain when you go. That is weight. When you go to that environment, you reduce. You're saying, no, I've reduced in mass. No, that is your weight. So weight is just a pull of gravity on an object, but mass is the quantity of matter. If your mass is 2 kgs, you were born with 2 kgs, you'll be increasing. You can't say, okay, that is weight, which is in newtons. You say, okay, my weight is now 47, my weight is 30, my weight is what? That one keeps on changing, but your mass the mass just go up. It is just going up, 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 up like that. It's a permanent increase in size, mass, compressivity, all those things. Then we now go to the fourth one. The fourth one that I want you people to understand, there is what we call feeding. So the fourth one is called feeding. I guess you know what feeding is. So plants are able to eat. Living organisms like you are able to eat. You are able to feed. So that is another thing that you are supposed to understand. The next one is called respiration. Respiration, one of my interesting topics. Respiration. This one is very important. You discover that respiration is a process by which living organisms obtain energy by breaking down carbohydrates in their cells. So that is what respiration is. So the living organisms obtain energy by breaking down the carbohydrates that is in their cells. So they're able to obtain energy. When they obtain this energy, it is now used for growth, it is used for reproduction, all those things. We are going to go in details. There is two types of respiration. We need to understand all those things. Then we go to this is number 5. So the fifth one, that's number 5. We go to number 6. Number 6 is called the excretion, the removal of metabolic waste from living organisms. Excretion. So all these things, you are supposed to know them. This is excretion. As a student, you need to make sure that you understand all these things. All these things, you need to make sure that you know them and understand them. So I want you people to know this. I want you people to understand this. So this one is excretion. Then we've got the last one that is called sensitivity. It is called sensitivity. So you need to understand all these things. I guess we are moving together. So the key thing here is understanding. Are you able to understand what I am teaching you? What is important is your understanding. You need to make sure that you understand. So after looking at all these things now, let us now differentiate living organisms from non-living organisms. We do something like this. So I'm going to say here, I'm going to put living organisms. So I'm going to put living organisms. Here I'm going to put non-living organisms. So this is non-living organisms. This is how we are going to move. So we are talking about living organisms and non-living organisms. We are differentiating them. So I'm going to put them in a table. So you now discover that living organisms are able to do all these 7 things. So just tell them, living organisms, they are what? They are able to reproduce. So these ones can do what? These ones can reproduce. These ones do not reproduce. Have you seen the difference? You just list these. These ones are able to do what? They are able to grow. Do not grow. Non-living organisms do not what? Do not grow. We also get to, there are a lot. So we are just talking about these 7. So when I tell you, give me 7, differentiate living organisms from non-living organisms, 7 marks. So you need to put there 7 points. So you say, okay, this one is able to do this. This one is able to do this, while this one does not do that. You are just explaining these things. So there's nothing difficult here. These ones are able to do what? They are able to move. Living organisms are able to move, locomote. So living organisms are able to move. These ones do not move. Do not what? Do not move. I want you people to know this. I want you people to understand this. This is something that is not that difficult. You are able to work out some of these things. So it is at this particular point now where we look at the first topic in biology called cells. This one, even if I guess there are certain people that have done university in here. So the first topic is that is taught in biology wherever you go. Same applies to mathematics. The first topic can be algebra and sets. These are the foundation topics of mathematics. Even biology, the first topic that you need to understand is called cells. You cannot be a student of biology that you are studying biology, you don't know parts of cells. Some people don't even know what a cell is. That's so bad, but that will never be your portion. As long as you are under me, you need to make sure that you study through these things. These are simple things that I want you to know. So we are looking at what? Cells. You ask yourself, what is a cell? So a cell, so let me do this. A cell is, so I don't know, these markers have started misbehaving. I don't know why. So what is a cell? A cell is a smallest. So this is a smallest functional. So it is a smallest functional unit of a living organism. Of a living organism. Of a what? Of a living organism. This is what you need to understand. So a cell is just the smallest functional unit of a living organism. This is what you need to understand. We are just talking about what? A smallest. Some people just tell you that it is just a smallest unit of a living organism. The biology that we used to do way back, people were saying living things, but there is an advanced term that was introduced. We don't say living things, we say living organisms. So this is a study, or this is a cell is the smallest functional unit of a living organism. This is what you are supposed to know and understand. So these cells cannot be seen by our naked eyes. We cannot view a cell using our naked eyes. So you discover that a cell cannot be seen. A cell cannot and will never. A cell cannot be seen by our naked eyes. By what? Our naked eyes. Our naked eyes. There is need for us to use a microscope. That is why you need to understand what a microscope is. So there is need of now putting in what we call a microscope. You need to understand what a microscope is. So micro, have you seen micro? I think you know what the word micro. There is macro and there is micro. So when we are talking about micro, small things. So what is a microscope? A microscope is an instrument. So this is a what? This is an instrument. So this is an instrument that is used to enlarge. So it is used to enlarge small tiny objects, which are not visible to our naked eyes. So which are not visible. So which are not visible to our naked eyes. To our naked eyes. Which are not visible to our naked eyes. This is what you need to understand. This is what we call a microscope. So you need to understand what a microscope is. After understanding this, there is another thing that you also need to understand, which we call types of microscope. So we are talking about now types. Types of what? Types of microscope. So I want you to be a student that is able to research. So I want you to be a student that is able to research. The next time we start our lesson, next time we meet, we are going to start on the types of microscope that each student is supposed to know. So right now, from the little information that I've just shared with you people, let us now see how we are going to work out these exam questions that I'm about to forward. Like I said, this was a public lesson. So this is just our first lesson, so it was public, you know. And those of you that are interested in starting, don't know what is happening. Writing is not. So I think this one is date. So this is 09. So this is the reason why we even encourage people to be paying. If these things were given to us for free, wouldn't even be charging for tuitions. But there are a lot of things that we get to use for us to conduct online lessons. I need to buy this cupboard you are able to see. I need to buy markers. I need to have bundles. A lot of things are involved. This is why we encourage you people to keep on supporting us, even as we get to help you get that distinction that you want to get. So this is where we are going to end from. I guess you've learned one or two things. Next time we meet, we'll be looking at types of microscopes. And I want you people to be studying. I told you I will be doing live and recorded. So when I call for a live, you need to be participating. You need to tell me, okay, we've got these types of microscope, we've got this one and that one, all those things. I want to see them. So I want to see you people participate. I want to see you people attend to lessons. This is where we are going to end from. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful night. Those of you in my group, I'm sharing a question that you are going to answer just now.